Hello and welcome to Must Read Fiction, a place for people who know that life is better with a novel in hand. I'm Erin Popelka, and I'm delighted to be here today with author Farhad Dadyburjor. Welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. Farhad Dadyburjor has been an entertainment and lifestyle journalist for over 20 years. Born and raised in Mumbai, India, he has held several senior editorial positions, including at DNA newspaper, as launch editor at the international men's magazine FHM, and currently at the Leela magazine. His debut novel, How I Got Lucky, was a satire on India's celebrity culture that was hailed as racy, sexy, and riotous by Vogue India. And his new novel is The Other Man. And I know you have a copy of The Other Man with you. Can we see this
Yes,
beautiful new
right
book?
here.
Oh
Here.
my goodness, look at that gorgeous book. I love the
Yeah,
colors. It's just so rich
it's
and
lovely.
delightful. Yes. So
Yeah.
tell me about The Other Man. Tell me about this beautiful book in your hands.
So since we're talking about the cover, I'll tell you, it's exactly what I had in mind. And I just gave them a brief and I said, just make it vibrant, colorful, and a few Indian motifs. And I think they've done a great job on that. There's a little bit of mehndi. It gives you a tease of what the book is about, but it doesn't really tell you exactly what the book is about also. So that works really well. But coming to the book, honestly, it's basically essentially a fun, happy gay rom-com set in Mumbai, and it's really strange that while writing it, I didn't know this, but it was only much later when we got a publisher and, things got firmed up. And the book was sort of in process that we realized this is possibly the first gay rom-com set in Mumbai to be published internationally, which is great. I mean, you feel like, okay, you're breaking the pink ceiling in some way. But at the same time, you also think like, what the hell? I mean, like, why haven't there been more? Like, why aren't there more? And I really hope this opens the gates to a lot more, because internationally there's, gay horror, gay fantasy, bi fantasy, trans fantasy. I mean, it's all there, but we yet have to pick that up here. So I'm really hoping this gives a boost to that out here. And coming to the book itself, the book that we're discussing, it's essentially about Ved Mehra, who's this ultra mega industrialist in Mumbai, rich, handsome, successful, looks a little bit like George Clooney, who everybody wants to, frankly, and seems to really have this wonderful life on the outside, the perfect GQ model, so to speak. People we look at on magazine covers and think, hey, great, they have it all. But actually, deep down inside, he's really miserable and unhappy, because he's leading a life of being a closeted gay man, and he's just had his heart broken by somebody in the past. And so there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of unhappiness. When you're closeted, there's so much you want to say, but you don't have the voice to say it. So he's going through that whole phase. And like a typical Indian mother, his mother pushes him into, getting into an arranged marriage, which is very, very typical out here. And she's like, it's about time, you're 38. What are my friends going to say? When am I going to have grandchildren? Which is such a big thing out here always. And in that moment of despair, he gives in and says, okay, let's go for it. And he thinks that, what, I'll somehow manage to get out of it some way or the other. Let's see, she set him up before and he's always managed to get up. And it's really strange, but you know how these things happen? I mean, it's almost like fate is laughing at you, because just at that time, he meets Carlos Silva, who's this much younger, bubbly American visiting Mumbai on work, very happy-go-lucky, very chilled out. And they happen to chat over Grindr and they meet up and they just fall into this madly loving relationship. Neither of them had thought about, because Carlos is moving on. He's just here for a while. Wade is getting engaged. So then it's that dynamics of the engagement is looming and it's coming up, and the mother has got all these preparations, the who's who of India coming down. And, it's all very typical to how things work out here. And at the same time, he's getting more and more involved with Carlos. He realizes that he's found the love of his life. He's realizing that he really wants to come out now. But yet he's just caught. It's like quicksand. He doesn't know which foot to put where, and he doesn't know what to do. And the book is really about that the dynamics and the crazy events that take place post that. But it's also, what I love about it, it's a very love-affirming book. You know, um, it's love-affirming between the two men that fall in love. It's love-affirming between a father and son, a mother and son, their relationship, which is really important for Indians. You know, we grew up really with a lot of respect for our parents, and we do a lot to keep them happy, and which is why a lot of people do end up, unfortunately, going into arranged marriages, you know, which is what happens very often. And also out here, I have to tell you why it's much harder to come out in India, which was partly the reason why I wanted to write this book, What It's Like to Be Gay in India, is because a lot of us live with our parents still. You know, real estate prices are rocketing. It's the same as New York. So you can understand it's not cheap at all. And so a lot of people stay with their parents, and that becomes harder for the children to come out. And so the whole book is about this, you know, the tension between this engagement coming up, and can he get out of it? And if he does, will the business world sort of just, you know, wipe him out? And because they're very conservative, the business world is very conservative. So will they just, you know, sort of knock him out? Will his parents not accept him? And at the same time, he's like, I'm madly in love with this guy. He's doing wonders for me, you know, internally. He's changing the way I feel. He's changing the way I think. So it's this wonderful, beautiful love story between them. And also it's love affirming because of the relationship, which is very unique, that he develops between himself and the girl he's going to marry, Disha, you know. And she also tells him, and they have a really great conversation between them. And both of them are very honest, and they both say that, you know, we're just doing this to keep our parents happy. But of course, he doesn't tell her why. Like, he doesn't say that I'm gay. But they both, even on her end, she's like, listen, I'm keeping my, you know, parents happy. And you're like, it's like marrying my best friend. So she's really happy too, you know. And so it's, for him, there's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of turmoil internally that he's going to ruin a lot of relationships that are important in his life. His whole career can go for a toss with this decision. But at the same time, he feels that, you know what, this is the love of my life. I mean, shouldn't we give up everything for the love of our life? So it's really that question, like, will he do it? Will he not? You know, and all the various crazy events that take place in the lead up to this engagement and this wonderful relationship that they share.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. With like a pretty looming deadline, right? This wedding coming up and happening. So that is also happening on the horizon. And I love how you describe this as love affirming. And, you know, want to just send so much love too. Thank you for creating this book that is, like you said, breaking this pink ceiling, that is telling this like gay romance set in India on the first time on an international stage, which actually leads really nicely into my next question, which, as I was researching for this conversation, I learned that you rewrote the ending of the book because of the September 6th, 2018 verdict that decriminalized same-sex relationships in India. And so section 377. And so why was this so momentum in 2018? And why did you need for it to be part of the book?
Yeah, so, you know, it's something that has been around for years. Section 377 was something that the British put in place in 1861. They left India a long time ago, but it was never removed. And, you know, that sort of makes, according to that, same-sex relationships are looked as unnatural offenses. And so a lot of times it was used against gay men, especially if they were married men who were trying to hook up with someone, you know, they could have been blackmailed, or, you know, these sort of sordid experiences. And it was something that was always hanging over everybody's head in some sense. It wasn't something that I really faced when I was younger and college. I never thought about it. It was something that came into the news maybe 6 years ago, 6 to 8 years ago, when it was being challenged in court, and everybody started talking about it. And there would be these rabid debates on TV, you know, where there would be people, these conservative, homophobic people, who would be like, you know, being gay is abnormal. And look at it, because, you know, that's why Section 377 is there. And that was always the rationale for it, that, you know what, according to the law, that's there. So it was sort of this, what do I say, this dark looming cloud over everybody's head, until it started getting challenged by activists. And finally, they knocked it down in 2018, which is around 3 years ago. And I remember that day, which was just wonderful. in that week, the lead up to that week, we sort of thought, yes, there's a high possibility it would happen because a lot of people had been speaking out, celebrities, people, politicians, everybody, a lot of people were talking about it. It's about time things change. So there was that atmosphere of positivity that, yes, it'll happen. But yet we were like, will it not? Will it, will it not? Till that day. And in the morning, it broke on Twitter that, the Supreme Court has decriminalized it. And there was just this flurry. I mean, I remember social media was just alive. I mean, it was lit with people, congratulating, and everyone, men, women, it didn't matter. It wasn't about just gay men, it was, or, gay women. It was just about human rights. And it was just about being on the same standing as everybody else. That's what it really was about. And the interesting thing was that by then the book was written. And I'd sent it to my agent, and she was in the process of, just finalizing things, and we were having discussions. So it was all done. But when that happened, which was a huge, huge event, I mean, for a lot of people, it was a second Independence Day, and I was just like, we have to incorporate this in the book because it's a new India. There were youngsters coming out on camera to their parents. I mean, there was just, for weeks on end after that, there were parties and there was, celebrations all the time. And there was a lot going on. I mean, it was just a huge, huge moment. And so I had a lot of discussions with my agent. I said, we just need to somehow bring this in. And it was already there in the book. It was mentioned in the background initially a couple of times, but I just felt this has to come in somewhere. And so we changed the last part around, and we did definitely bring it in a lot more through the book, in terms of, because it was important for an international audience to also know about it. Out here in India, we all knew about it, but it was important to sort of explain it a little bit more for readers internationally, what it was about, why was it such a big deal? Why was, he always thinking about it, or why were these, Twitter alerts all the time coming that it's being challenged, or, people are talking about it. And so we did change it about, we brought it out a lot more, and the book is set in the lead up to that change. So it's set literally in that year, and it all just came together wonderfully. I mean, it all just worked really wonderfully. And it was a really, really big moment. I mean, a lot of people thought it would never happen. It was like a miracle. I mean, it was literally a rainbow. I'd say it was literally the rainbow, that we all wanted. And that came about. So it was fantastic. And I thought it was really important to put that in, because there's definitely a change post that, in terms of mentality and on a lot of different scales. It's brought about a lot of change because it really puts everybody on the same pedestal. There is nothing now that says you can't do this. Sure, same-sex marriages are still not allowed, and that's something that's now being spoken about, and that's starting to be challenged, and that's the next step. But to just have this first step was huge. And I was just like, it has to be celebrated in this book, because the book is all about love, and this was really a celebration of love. So that's how it came about, and I think it just worked out really well.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it does seem like, yes, the timing and to get it like baked in there as it all unfolded, and to make good use of like what was happening. It sounds like for you in real time, and then work that in with your characters. I just love that worked out. And you're right. Like you said, same-sex marriage is still not legal in India. And here in the US, it only became legal in 2015, which 6 years ago now. And so that actually hasn't been that long, but it's already here. It feels so normal. Like, yes, of course, things like, and get married. It's great. Like, of course,
I know. Like, like just a couple of days ago, Switzerland said that we're legalizing same-sex marriages. And I think, it's happening a lot around the world. And there is a lot of talk about it out here. It is the next step, and it is, what they're working towards. So, let's just keep our fingers crossed. I mean, next conversation might be this between us.
That's great. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness, I love it. That'll be the
yeah,
next rom-com.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
yes, for sure, for sure. Oh
yeah,
my gosh, that's
yeah.
great. And so, like you mentioned that this is set in India, and you really wanted to show this Indian lens. So, what are you hoping, like American readers will really pull from that? What are you hoping that they'll see? And nodding too that actually, as we're having this conversation, it's like 10:30 at night for Farhad, so we're keeping the caffeine rolling. So, thanks for staying up late for this chat. But yeah, what are you hoping people will learn about, kind of life in India as they read The Other
Yeah.
Man?
For the longest time, India has always been looked at as exotic. you know they looked at there's either it's about snakes or these godmen or sort of really exotic things, but Mumbai as a city is a really throbbing metropolis. I mean, it's like a 24/7 city, you know what I mean? It has some of the biggest stars in Bollywood staying here. It has some of the richest men in the world staying here. It's a really lush, moving city. And I thought that was important to show, and the visage of the city is also changing. You have a lot of these big, tall glass towers coming in, and these fancy hotels and these health food cafes, everybody's going vegan and dairy free and all of that. They're taking their cues from what's happening around the world. And, this whole health conscious thing that's happening. And so all of that, I just wanted to bring that whole vibe in of what the city is like, because it's a wonderful, throbbing city. It's not, a lot of people, when you talk about India, they think, oh, Goa, or, they have just certain preconceptions, or the Taj Mahal. And I was just like, I want them to know about the city of Mumbai with all its sort of like glory and, vastness, and also gay life, also bring in that it has a very strong gay life. It has a great, like, nightlife, the coffee shops and everything. It's changed a lot. I mean, this wasn't how it was, say maybe 15, 20 years ago, say 20 years ago. I mean, it's all come in, and the whole face of the city has changed, Of course, I'm talking about pre-COVID times. I mean, now things are still a little restricted and stuff like that, but that will change eventually, and it'll go back to how it was. But there is this sort of pulse to the city that I wanted to bring out in the book. And I'm really hoping that, a lot of people visit the city after that, because a lot of the places that I've mentioned are actually there in the city. So whether it's Toto's, the garage pub, it actually exists. It's a really popular garage pub that exists in Bandra. The location of Bandra, or the Gateway of India, the Promenade, or Alibag, which I've said is like the Hamptons of India. All these things really exist. And I just wanted to show this sort of, it is the ultra rich life in some sense, because he is a mega industrialist. His dad has this massive, $1 million electronics empire. So I wanted to bring that out and also portray that with the city and all of its beauty, even if they're just going for a coffee, I mean, what it's like, or they're just going, they're just walking hand in hand, late at night, because that's what a lot of gay men do, because if they're staying with their parents, they have to be out somewhere. So then you're usually walking on the promenade, or you're going, at a park till it's time to like figure out, okay, what's the next step? And can we take that, So I'm really hoping this opens up, like an avenue for a lot of international readers to understand what the city is like, and realize that it's really a throbbing, pulsing, fun place, a vibrant metropolis.
Oh, I love it. And I think that's one of the best parts about like fiction and reading is it really does give you a passport from your couch. You can go see
Yeah.
Mumbai. You can
Yeah.
imagine what it would be like to be like in an arranged marriage that's happening, but oh my gosh, but I'm gay. What am I gonna do? And so you can have this chance to like live a life that's very different from your own, but also like really exciting,
Yeah.
welcome. And so thank you
And
for giving us that
yeah,
passport.
and honestly, that's something that really happens a lot, and I've heard numerous instances of that. It's not something that is fiction in any way, really. I mean, a lot of gay men and women are pushed into arranged marriage because that's a very traditional thing to happen. And unfortunately, parents always think their kids are heterosexual. They don't ask them, and if they don't go and tell them, they just take it for granted that they are. And, you know, in some instances, I've known of men who come out to their parents, you know, while they're preparing the marriage and saying that, you know what, I can't get married. I am gay. And they'll be told things like, don't worry, your wife will make you normal. Or, you know, this will all work out for you now, you know, now you lead a normal life. And they sort of get pushed into it. And the unfortunate thing of this whole thing is that nobody's happy at the end of it, because the husband is not happy because he can't really have a fulfilling life. The wife is shattered because she figures something is wrong, even though he may not come out to her. And the parents are never happy because they see the kids unhappy, you know, so it's a no-win situation for anyone. So I really felt that was important to talk about. You know, coming out, yes, it's tough in India because of various reasons, but that's also a universal phenomenon that happens, you know. Internationally also, that's a problem. But arranged marriages is something that's very, very typical of India. And I really wanted to talk about that in this respect.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for sharing that and giving us that portrait. You're right, because it raises like such important questions. That's true regardless. You know, it's like it's so easy to make decisions that please other people and put yourself second. And what happens is, like, you know, you just break. You can't live under that weight. It just doesn't work. You know, so that is so relatable to so many people from all different walks of life. So that is great. And so my last question, I know that you are also an entertainment and lifestyle journalist. And so how has that perspective shown up in your fiction?
Well, the first book that I wrote was actually about a journalist in the entertainment world, and it was a coming of age story. It was a satire. I made a lot of the characters a little over the top. But again, it was based on what I had seen. It was based on stories I'd heard. And similarly, you know, even The Other Man is based on people I've seen, based on stories I've heard. That's how I write, you know, it's really an amalgamation of what I hear and see around me, and then turn it into fiction. And I hope it interests people enough, you know, that fiction interests people enough, but it's really based on reality to a very large extent. So in the first book was a lot about the entertainment world and you know, the crazy highs and lows and, you know, sort of the revolving doors of fashion, PR, Bollywood, and journalism. You know, it's all one rotating circle eventually. And that was with the first book. And, you know, it was received really well. It was a satire and people are like, oh my God. And it was a coming of age book. So it had a very strong, it had a very strong gay angle. I mean, the main character was, you know, coming to terms with his sexuality too, but through the world of entertainment. In The Other Man, I brought that about more from just the lifestyle the people lead, you know, the businessmen as businessmen, the industrialists, the stylishness that comes with it, you know, that comes with money, like sort of leading the good life. Also just, you know, marriages are always really lavish and large here. And, you know, you never have a small time, like nobody has a marriage and doesn't publicize it. You know, it has to be this grand affair. And which is why, you know, the whole plan for that engagement was really big. You know, the mother's preparing like plates from here and this from there, and, you know, fly this in from Paris. So, you know, things like that. And that's really how it is. I mean, a marriage is possibly the biggest moment in the parents' lives for their children. You know, and they take a lot of joy in, you know, building that up for their kids. And so that whole thing. So I think from that angle, it's coming just in terms of, you know, the life, bringing it in. But definitely, the first book was definitely a lot more about what it's like to be an entertainment journalist and deal with a lot of the madness.
For sure. Well, that's also another fun thing. It's like reading about like very wealthy people to be like, what would it be like?
Yes. I know. And, you know, I'd read, there were a couple of Indian gay novels that had come out earlier, you know, which I'd read earlier, several years earlier, but nobody ever wrote about sort of the rich gay man. And I always wondered why, you know, because I would meet a lot of men like this, you know, who are successful, who are wealthy, who dress sharply, but nobody ever put them in fiction. And I always wondered, why do people not talk about this strata, you know, like, what is it? So I was like, this, milieu needs to be spoken about in some sense. And it just honestly, you know, all these things just sort of came in very naturally. It was when I started the novel, when I spoke to my agent about it, I was just like, let's have this beautiful love story between two men of different ages, different religions, from different countries, and yet bound by love, you know. And that was really the basis. And then, of course, everything else came in terms of, what the lifestyle is, and he'll be a businessman, and, about Carlos and about, the mother, and all of that came in. But that was really the basis of the story. There's this beautiful love story, because a lot of, LGBT themed novels, a lot of gay novels that I've read in the past by really, really strong authors, literary authors, have always had something that's quite unhappy at the center, you know. And I was just like, no, this novel needs to celebrate love. This needs to be just the opposite. I was like, I've not read something that just makes me feel hopeful, full of love. If I'm closeted, it makes me feel that, yes, there is the possibility of getting out. If I'm going to get married, it gives me that sort of momentum. So that was really the idea, to just make this a really happy, loving novel. That was really important. And I think it just all, honestly, looking back in hindsight, it all just fell into place very beautifully. The timing fell into place very beautifully, I mean, I'm so glad. I mean, I could bring in the whole 377 being knocked down, that was an important aspect. And so it all just came together. And I just think we are in the moment where inclusivity is so important. The spotlight internationally, even out here, is so strong. And I just think this is like a book of its times. It's really right now. And I'm so glad it's just all come together.
Oh, and I am so glad that you wrote it. So folks who are watching, please pick up a copy of The Other Man. Let's see that beautiful book again. Yes, let's see it. Get your hands on this copy. It celebrates love. It is just a wonderful adventure and just a delightful journey. So Farhad Dadyburjor, thank you so very much for writing The Other Man and for taking the time to speak with me today. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. This was such a fun chat, and I love chatting. We can chat for another hour also. I'm not sleeping anytime soon, so no problem.
Sounds great. Next time, when your next novel comes out, we'll book a whole hour. We'll just keep going.
For sure.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.